Thanks for tuning in to this week's edition of the Brett and Matt Show. As always, he's Brett, I'm Matt, and we kind of got some stuff going on. The Final Four is happening this weekend. The matchups are Wisconsin versus Kentucky, a rematch from last year, and on the other side of the bracket, we have Duke versus Michigan State. So we have three number one seeds and a number seven seed advancing. Well, right off the bat, why don't we talk about this a little bit? What are your thoughts going into this?
My thoughts are, well, I'm gonna be up there. I'm not going to the game. I don't have the money to spend on a ticket to get in the game. Though if I see somebody drop a ticket, I might not be such a nice citizen. I might just pick that thing up and run like hell to the gates and get entry. Um, but my initial thoughts on the games are, I mean, Kentucky's obviously been the best team all year. Um, they've had some really close games. I think Georgia, LSU were a couple of close ones. Obviously, that last game against Notre Dame, where Jerry and Grant, the last couple possessions, they got a little bit away from what Notre Dame was doing that made them successful. Looked a little bit like hero ball, but maybe that's what coach called. If that's what coach called, I guess it's not really taking it into your own hands and trying to play hero. And obviously Notre Dame ended up losing that game there in the end. Wisconsin, though, has obviously offensively perhaps maybe the most efficient offense ever, at least since Ken Palm has been keeping track of the numbers, and it's not even close, really, between them and the number two in the history of the Ken Palm rankings. And then Kentucky's got the second best defense that he's ever recorded, behind another, I think it was another Calipari team actually when he was at Memphis, has the number one defense ever. So, I mean, it should be fun. It's going to be really interesting in that game. At least Wisconsin's got that length. I mean, they're not as long as Kentucky, obviously, who's got three guys over 6'10" in the starting lineup and another 7-footer and 6'10" guy coming off the bench. I mean, that's a really long team. Um,
Smallest starting guy is like 6'6" or something. I mean,
yeah, the smallest guy is 6'6". I think ours is listed at like 6'3" or 6'4", with Gosser and Koenig at about a 6'3" ish, each of them. So I mean, even the guards are super long. They're the guards that come in off the bench for Kentucky are short. I think they're like 6 feet. Um, so hey, at least we'll have a height advantage then. But that's about it. I mean, but we have that type of offense. I think that if we can not just pass the ball around the perimeter, but get some guys that are willing to drive to the lane to at least collapse the defense a little. Obviously, I know it's scary going into those giant trees that Kentucky has in there, but just get in, try to collapse the defense and dish it out. Because we've had some games recently where we've been shooting it really well, and we have guys that can shoot. Unfortunately, just a little bit streaky. So if it's one of those games where we're missing shots, obviously we're not going to have a chance. But like we saw against Arizona, when the shots are falling, Arizona had the number two defense this year, and we scored 55 in the second half, which is more than they allowed in like 10 games or something like that all season. So I mean, we've
yeah,
got a team that can do it.
yeah.
Well, it's just going to be, goddamn, I hate Kentucky after what they did to us last year, man. I just want to be able to drive home with a smile on my face Saturday night. That's all I want.
Well, what would be more heartbreaking, losing to Kentucky or losing the championship game? Because I
Um,
think losing the championship game would be worse. That would be
it,
devastating to me.
it would it would
At
be
least
terrible
if
to
you
lose
lose to
that
Kentucky,
championship game.
whatever. I mean, they're they're obviously supposed to be the best team. They're chasing history and being the first team I think from since you're Indiana Hoosiers to go undefeated.
Yeah, it's
Um,
been 30 years since, which is weird, by the way. I read something that a couple of the players from that Indiana team are actually hoping Kentucky goes undefeated. They, unlike the Miami Dolphins, who celebrate every time the last team goes or gets a loss in the NFL. I guess these Hoosiers are kind of hoping somebody, joins their ranks and that they can kind of, have along with them in that undefeated season ranking, which is a little weird. I don't know how I feel about that. I would always want to be the only one that ever did something, but
yeah, that is kind of that's an interesting take. Yeah, I just it's on our side of the bracket, no offense, Michigan State and Duke, Izzo versus Coach K, like that's great, but obviously I'm biased because I'm a huge Badger fan. But this game on this side is just epic. Like you have the Wisconsin Badgers who are out for blood. Like that this was our whole season was to get to this point to be able to go against Kentucky and avenge a last second 3-pointer that we lost on last year.
Mm-hmm.
But then on the other side you have Kentucky who's chasing history and trying to go undefeated, and they have to go through us. Like a lot of people said that we were going to be possibly Kentucky's biggest threat, and now here we are right in front of them. The way I look at it, and I think we discussed this either last week or off camera, we said that we both agreed that we thought that either Arizona, us, or Kentucky was going to win it all. That we thought the three best teams were on the same side of the bracket, and regardless, if we win, I hope we're gonna win the championship. I'll be devastated if we lose. And if Kentucky wins against us, I don't think Duke or Michigan State will beat them. Oh yeah, it's crazy. I've been a Badger basketball fan for a long time, and a lot of people. Not that I would say that anyone in Wisconsin was maybe so much clamoring for Bo Ryan's head a few years, but I do think people kind of wanted him to do a little more. Like, he was this really good regular season coach, would get us into the tournament every year, and then just seemed like we could never advance super far under him. And he's finally, these last couple of years, gotten some, like obviously Decker was a really big name recruit. He's gotten some guys, and like Kaminsky's like obviously blossomed into a really good player. Like he's gotten some guys that are just really good. And Koenig was another big recruit that we got. We took Nigel Hayes from Toledo, or he's out of Toledo, Ohio. I don't know how big of a recruit he was, but he's turned into a really good player too. It feels like Bo Ryan's finally, and as I say this, we lost Diamond Stone to Maryland, but it does seem like Bo Ryan is starting to kind of get some pretty good recruits. And as a Badger basketball fan, and you are too, obviously, at least I always kind of appreciated Bo Ryan, and his style of basketball is different. I feel like watching it now, it's almost like, do you remember back when the Spurs were really boring to watch if they won titles, and now they're really, really good offensively? It's kind of interesting to see like how the Badger basketball team has kind of changed over the years. Bo's a little bit more now to letting younger guys play. We're still not like an up and down, like we're just gonna run and gun type team, but we do get transition points now, which is something we didn't always used to do. I don't know, man. I'm super excited for our matchup. I guess if you had to give me 3 keys to a Badger victory, what do you think they are?
3 keys to a Badger victory. 1, avoid foul trouble. Obviously, that last game against Arizona, 21 fouls, which was way out of the ordinary. Wisconsin's the least fouling team in the country at only like 12.4 per game. So I think that official group actually has one of the games in the Final Four. I don't know if it's Wisconsin, Kentucky, or if it's going to be the Duke, Michigan State game. But that group, I believe, is going to be here doing a game. So having played with us before, I mean, they might come in, with some preconceived notions of whether or not we're foulers or floppers or whatever else that they may think. So I'd hate for that to affect a game, especially depth-wise. Like if they're going to call a tight game where there's a lot of fouls, you know what? Kentucky could foul out 3 dudes and bring in 3 more All-Americans, right? We foul out 3 guys. We're bringing in guys that haven't played all year. So we got to stay out of foul trouble. got to hit the glass. I know Notre Dame was surprising in how much they were able to get on the boards, get some offensive rebounds and some second chance points, and then also try to limit Kentucky's because obviously with how big they are, how great they are at getting in the lane, is that if you do some help defense against them and they put up a shot, even if it misses, they're going to have a 7-footer or a 6'6" guy with supreme athleticism and be able to get that put back. So you got to limit that, and then just making the shots. I mean, talk to Bo Ryan every time, and at the halftime interviews or whenever, and sometimes we've had some games where we haven't shot so well, and he's like, hey, all we got to do is make shots, and then surprisingly, or maybe unsurprisingly, every time in the second half we come out and make 70%, and oh, by damn, we scored points, we won the game. So I'd say those are probably the biggest things, just staying out of foul trouble, limiting second chance points for them, and trying to get the most we can. I know I combine those two into one since it's a rebounding issue. And then just making the shots, you got to get in the lane, and then we'll get open shots, move the ball like we always do in our offense, and you just got to knock them down when you get the chance.
As big of a Badger fan as I am, just going to say that in most sports that we happen to follow, defense wins championships, and that's something that we have really not played very well, especially from three-point range against opposing teams, apparently. So I mean, we gotta limit. If we can, like you mentioned, if we can hit our shots, we definitely stand a chance. We can't let Kentucky go, and they're already hard enough as it is. We can't let them be making three-pointers consistently on us. I don't want to get into a three-point competition with a team. I just don't like that. Even though our guys can and have proven like they can hit three-point shots just fine, I just would prefer not getting in a three-point competition with another team, especially when the other team happens to be Kentucky, who, as you mentioned, with their size, are going to have a good chance to get a lot of rebounds. I think that's an important key. Limit Kentucky's three-point attempts. Honestly, Kaminsky's going to have to bang with those guys. I mean, he's going to have to. We need Kaminsky to have like another 25-point game. And he's going to have to. He's not a great rim protector, but he's the best we got probably, and he's going to have to. If he could, he's really good at drawing fouls, and I would like if he can maybe get who's their center's name?
Well, they got two, Willie Cauley-Stein and Karl Anthony Towns.
Oh, God, they're both...
Karl Anthony Towns is the one that might be... He's going to be a top 3 pick. He's the one that's in the discussion for a first-rounder. But Willie Cauley-Stein, he's the best defender probably in the country.
Boy.
He was like a first-team All-American, and he only scored 9 points a game. I mean, that's how much people have respected him in his game this year because of how much he brings defensively and on the glass.
Yeah, Kaminsky's going to have a good game, I think. Try to limit what they do to us. And I guess my third key, someone is going to have to step up. I don't know who. Maybe the last 2 games it's been Sam Dekker. Maybe he continues his hot streak, and he's the guy that steps up, nailing big shot after big shot. Otherwise, to be honest, there was the last game against Arizona. In the first half, I felt like Nigel Hayes was struggling, and in the second half, Arizona started he just wasn't hitting that jump shot or the 3-point shot. And then in the second half, I hit like either 2 3-pointers or 2 jump shots, and all of a sudden Arizona decided they needed to start not just leaving him open because he was hitting it. Something like that, like he's gonna have to hit those shots consistently. Can't have silly turnovers. Not that we turn the ball over a lot. We just have to play Badger basketball, and I think we'll be in it. If we can keep it a close game, and maybe we can hit 1 or 2 more shots than them, we'll hopefully get the victory. I don't know what kind of free throw shooting team they are come the end of game. Obviously, we're really good. I think as a team we shoot pretty close to 75% overall, which is pretty good. Do you have a final score, Brett?
Both teams are slower paced. Now that's probably somewhat due because Kentucky's so good defensively, teams aren't getting shots off right away on them, and if you are, it's probably a terrible shot. And we'll play slow anyway, so it's going to be a lower possession game. I'm going to go with a score of like 72 to 68. I don't say who's winning. I'm
Oh
just
my
saying that's going to be the score. Because I can't, and I don't want to jinx anything. I don't want to. If you look at a bracket I filled out, you'll know who I think is winning. It's the only one I filled out.
Yeah, I only filled out one too. And Iowa State, thank you, screwed me royally.
I had them going to the Elite Eight, I think, or maybe Final Four.
I had them playing my championship team.
Which I'm assuming was Kentucky.
No,
You went with Wisconsin?
I went with Wisconsin. Yep.
I did too, actually.
Do actually.
Well, that's because last year I felt like if I was going to pick, and I knew Wisconsin was a really good team, and I thought they would go really far, but at the same time, I felt like that feeling was like being a homer. You know, I was like, man, I love this team. They're so good, this and this and this. And then I'm like, but if I picked them to go to the Final Four, it just felt like I could judge myself as being like a homer. So I started judging myself, and I actually had them losing to Creighton, who they didn't even have to play because Creighton lost before that matchup would have even happened. So this year I embraced the homer. Last year I just said no homer. This year I'm embracing it. I'm letting it be me, and I did actually have Wisconsin win this game.
That's fair. What about on the other side of the bracket? We have Duke versus Michigan State. Do you really think Michigan State can pull off the upset?
Can't sure. I mean they've pulled off basically every upset along the way. Um, so can they? Yeah. Do I think they have a great chance? I mean, I think they have less of a chance of beating Duke than we have of beating Kentucky.
That's a great way to put it because I feel the exact same way.
I mean, but there's a shot. I mean, Travis Trice is definitely playing a lot better. Guys like Dawson, who actually didn't play great against Louisville, but he's like a guy that is usually pretty consistent. Um, and they got that one dude that shoots threes. Forbes, I think his name is a great shooter. Um,
They have
but
Valentine,
realistically,
who I dislike, but he does all the little things that get unnoticed.
right. I mean, just realistically, talent-wise, and I think that's. I mean, you mentioned too Wisconsin and like their recruits and everything like that. Like, I think a lot of the Wisconsin historically mostly won on system. You know, we've been top four in the Big Ten every year, and we've kind of just I don't know outplayed and outsmarted other teams. You know, with our system. By not trying to rush it, getting good shots, making them do the hard stuff and the little stuff consistently, which other teams don't normally do for a full shot clock and stuff like that. But now that we've got better talent, hey, look, we made it to the Final Four, you know, with guys like Decker and Kaminsky. Koenig and Trey Jackson stepped up a lot last year when he was healthy. I mean, so when you get better talent, you tend to win more games, and Duke is just a more talented team. So
Yeah, I agree with that.
it's going to be a lot harder for Michigan State. Though I will be rooting for them. I don't almost ever root for Michigan State. But I know that some of the Michigan State and Wisconsin fans were actually planning on doing a T-shirt swap sort of deal where you bring a second shirt with you from your team. So, you know, I'd go up wearing my Badger red and I'd have a second Badger shirt. So people that attending the game, they'd just swap with like a Michigan State person. So a Michigan State person could wear red during the Wisconsin-Kentucky game, and then the Wisconsin fan gets to wear like Michigan green during the Michigan State Duke game, so we can actually get some extra color, you know, in there instead of it just being a giant blue sea, which is probably what it's going to be anyway.
Right.
I feel like the Big Ten teams are definitely pulling together and cheering for each other.
Yeah. Their conference kind of was, you know, supposed to be on a down year this year. We got two teams in the Final Four, so. So with that said, sounds like we're both probably picking Duke.
Probably. The smart pick is Duke.
Yeah, I mean, nothing. I like Michigan State's a tough team, but ultimately, I think it just boils down to they don't have as much talent as you hit on, and that's just my biggest reason for picking them. I will say that if Wisconsin has to play Duke, I'm going to be really nervous. Okay, how do I put it this way? If Wisconsin plays Duke, I'm going to be really worried because we couldn't beat Duke on our own court, so that's not cool. Let alone they're going to be playing a championship game against us, so it's like, well, shit. But the funny thing is, if Kentucky beats us and they have to play Duke, I really think Kentucky is just gonna throttle them. Maybe not throttle them, but I think Kentucky would win comfortably.
I think too something to remember. I don't remember if Decker was hurt. I mean, he played in those
Oh
early
yeah, he had an ankle. He had
his
that
ankle
injury.
wasn't great. I think he only
That's
scored like 5 points that game.
Yeah, you're right. He missed some shots that he should have really made.
Yeah, and at this point now, I think we actually are a little bit deeper. Dukin's playing better offensively, at least. Um, he's got a shot back. With Koenig in, I think that adds another dimension. And Trey being healthy again.
Yeah, you're okay. That's fair. Yep, Trey
I like
being
the Koenig, Trainig. That's both of them combined into one player. The Koenig, being out there because he does have a really nice, his passing is really good. Which
and we have Shoal. What's that guy's name? Showalter. Oh, we have that guy too.
Which, if you would have put Showalter in that Duke game, I'm sure he played, but at that time, I don't think anyone in any of the Badger faithful would have been comfortable with that. So, but I'm going to be up there, so maybe I can get some pictures of the game and the scenery. Maybe I'll tweet some of that stuff out if I can. You guys, I have a flip phone, so I'm not taking pictures with this. But I might have other ways to get some nice pictures, and I'll share those if I can from the weekend while I'm up there.
I guess the other thing that happened this last weekend, I went to a Bucks game, so got to watch the Milwaukee Bucks unfortunately lose to the Golden State Warriors, who are the NBA's best team right now. Steph Curry is insanely good. It seemed like we had someone's hand right in his face and just shot from 3-point range and just drilled it like nothing, just nothing but net. It was definitely something to watch. And seeing the Greek Freak in person too, definitely gave me an appreciation kind of for just how incredibly big he is. Like for a shooting guard, like to have his length is just unreal. He's crazy athletic. I mean, he gets up and down the court so fast. It's just he's definitely had some potential to be a really, really good player. He needs to work on his jump shot, obviously, but it was a good experience. I'm glad I got to the game this year. I'd like to go next year, hopefully to one as well. Hopefully Jabari Parker will be healthy and maybe the Bucks will be doing a little bit better. One note on the Bucks that I will say is they haven't been as good since the trade when they traded Brandon Knight. And from following some Wisconsin stuff up here, it actually on one of the radio shows, an insider was discussing about how the Bucks just haven't been the same team since that. And apparently Brandon Knight was a really big locker room guy and someone who was always kind of like the first guy in, last guy out, and just kind of brought a really big leadership to that team, which is something, obviously, when you're doing trades, like, oh, you think we're trading Brandon Knight for Michael Carter-Williams, we're getting a 6'6" point guard who is going to be under contract for the next 2 years still after this year, and Brandon Knight's going to be a free agent anyways, like, we should just cut him loose and trade him, and obviously the team lost some of its gel, if you'd say, once we traded him. So it's something that can't always be measured, but I think has a real effect on teams.
Yeah, that's a good point too. And another thing that Knight wasn't afraid to shoot the three, and occasionally he'd be making those. Whereas now offensively we don't really have a great. I mean, I know Ilyasova is kind of like our best outside shooter. I guess him and Middleton, right? And neither one of those guys are like super consistent high scorers. I know that gets a little frustrating watching those guys always try to shoot.
Don't get started about Ilyasova, Brett. Are you serious? He went 1 for 10. 1 for 10 in the game I went to. Are you serious? How do you go 1 from 10? 1 for 10?
Maybe at some point you think you'd stop shooting, but shooters shoot, and you'll get out of it eventually. It just didn't happen that game.
No, it didn't.
But another thing too that the Bucks did before I go on to that, at the game, what kind of pump up the crowd sort of atmosphere stuff did they do? I mean, like, there's an MC. Did they do giveaways and stuff to try to get the crowd involved at all, or was there anything like that you remember?
Well, the game I actually went to was sold out, and I don't know. It looked like there were some empty seats to me, but I will say like for I don't know. Like if you ever watched any NBA games on TV, there's usually always open seats, but um, it did look like it was pretty packed, and it was actually 90s night. So they had like old school uniforms on, and they had like 90s theme stuff. So they had like a bunch of Bango mascots like performing 90s songs like during halftime, and they had an MC. There was a guy there that did a live performance, and I honestly can't remember his name for the life of me. But they did have some live entertainment at halftime, and they have this like giant cannon that like has like a bunch of
T-shirt.
like yeah, shoots a bunch of T-shirts out, and then from the rafters they had like parachuting like T-shirts that came down too. I didn't get one, but um, so that was kind of neat. And they also have this big bingo blimp that comes out and floats around the arena. Um, and yeah, and then Bingo also drives a Harley around the court at one time.
Where
um,
everyone likes sucking in those fumes.
yeah. But yeah, I mean, it was a fun atmosphere. I think I would imagine, to be honest with you, and to the few people that watch us, I would imagine the atmosphere was probably better before the All-Star break when the Bucks were actually winning. Um, I would imagine the atmosphere was definitely better then.
Would make some sense. Um, and then again, like I was about to move on to it. They just unveiled the new logo, maybe. They had that little teaser. It's not going to be official until the 13th, I think, right?
Hmm.
Um, but what do you think of that? It was kind of like the M. It was a little bit blocky. I thought it kind of personally looked almost like if you were to take a villain, from a comic strip and kind of make them, I don't know what the M, I guess, whatever it would be, but it almost looked very comic-y, cartoony type block letter M for me. I wasn't a huge fan of that. What was your opinion on just the M part?
I actually completely agree with you. I saw the M and I was kind of like, that's interesting. Like it just you hit villain. When I saw the M, it actually kind of reminded me that same M. I think would actually look really good with like, for example, like if a team that comes to mind for me is like, what if that was the M logo for like the Memphis Grizzlies? Like I feel like it just would fit better with a like tougher. Not that our deer's weak, but I don't know. It just didn't seem like it fit perfectly.
Right. Though I will say, they came out then, or we saw Jason Wilde tweeted. I know some other people had it first. The maybe the new logo with the new colors too, because it got that tan color now to go with the green. Maybe throwing in
Hmm.
some blue in there as well. I actually thought that deer, that tan colored deer with like the white eyes, looked really good. Like
Yeah.
that was much better to me than just having that M. Um, Looked a little more intimidating, kind of fun, a little scary at the same time. And they still incorporated that M into like where it's like neck, I guess would be.
Hmm.
And apparently they were saying somebody mentioned that they think the M is actually supposed to be sort of resembling a hoof print of like of a deer. And they kind of made the M around the hoof print of a deer. So
I
uh,
didn't think of that. That
I
that's
guess
a, that could be.
there's some like design work that went into that and some thought process. Not a huge fan of the M, but that deer I thought was actually really cool. Um,
Yeah, I definitely agree. I am on 100% with you. I thought the deer looked good. I thought everything together looked actually pretty cool. The M by itself, probably not a giant fan of. Something I find interesting is teams usually wait to do this kind of stuff in the off season, and we're not even finished with the season, and we're unraveling or unveiling stuff like this right now, which I guess is interesting. Trying to draw more buzz, maybe.
Maybe we'll have the jerseys in time for the playoffs, the new color and everything. What if we roll
Yeah,
it
that's
out for
right.
that?
We're not going to make the playoffs.
What we got to, man. We have to be making the playoffs, right? The East is so bad. What is our position on that right now?
I don't know. I know we're in sixth, or we were in sixth, but I know that the teams behind us were catching us really fast. Um, Although we did beat the Bulls last night, so there was that.
It
Um,
helps, and I know the Pacers suck, so they've fallen back. After they won 12 of 14, I think the Pacers did. Uh, bless me. They've they've kind of fallen back and haven't really done anything lately.
right.
So I think we're doing all right. Let me look at the standings real quick and see how many more games we got. Let's see. We are still in sixth with 7 games to go.
Okay. Yeah, we
So
should make the playoffs.
yeah, we're 3 games up on the team in ninth. So as long as we win like three, and it's the Celtics. I don't think they're going to be just winning all 7 games. So if we win probably like 2 or 3 games, there's a really good chance that we should make it.
Right.
Unfortunately, that means we'll be playing a team like, depending on where we're at, Toronto. The only teams we could probably play would be Atlanta, Cleveland, Toronto, or Chicago. I don't really see us coming out of a series against probably any of those teams. But hey, at least we made the playoffs, something to build on, especially without our first round, number 2 overall pick, whatever Jabari ended up being
Yeah, he's number
on the
2.
team this year. So with him back next year, plus whatever draft picks we get, I think
It'll be
that'll
good to get the young team some playoff experience, anyways.
exactly. And then, hey, Michael Carter Williams can experience, what it's like to be on a winning team. Maybe his mindset will change.
Hey, last night, I think he had like 10 assists and 21 points, or maybe that was a couple nights ago. But
I know he did really good against Chicago, but he was being guarded, I'm sure, by Aaron Brooks, who's 6 inches shorter than he is. So I would hope he'd have a good game.
Yeah. So I guess we can touch on. There's not a ton of NFL news going on right now. We're still working on putting together our draft boards and well, our mock drafts. But some stuff that has been happening. Apparently, Kurt Warner had some things to say.
Yeah, well, he was at, I don't know, a pro day, and he said that some teams that were at pro days when he was also there at teams, they actually asked Kurt Warner if he'd like to go for a tryout, even though he's like 43 years old or 44 or something like that. They're actually asking Kurt Warner to come out for tryouts. I think that's just an indication of, I don't know how serious these guys were, or if Kurt thought they were serious and they're not. But that's just something that I think gives a little indicator of where some teams think the talent level is in the NFL right now for quarterbacks, plus obviously the upcoming draft too. Probably not a whole lot of talent that they think is coming up in the last few drafts, plus the next couple. So it's a little funny and weird that I think a 43-year-old guy would be getting asked to try out for some teams. I know you've hated Kurt Warner though, right? So you probably just think this is ridiculous.
This is absolutely ridiculous. The guy's in his 40s. He's not Brett Favre. He wishes he was Brett Favre. He just, come on, this can't be serious. Like, really? Have you seen the guy? Like, old people, like, grandpa old, like, their muscles, like, kind of sag off. Kurt Warner had that happening when he was, like, 36, okay? Like, come on, let's be real. Next time,
I
this is
don't think he
ridiculous.
would have a chance. And I think it's ridiculous. I do agree, because the guy hasn't played in a few years, and he was a statue as is. And, him being hurt is what I think pretty much what led to his retirement. So, he would obviously have no chance. I just thought it was an interesting topic, just because if teams are seriously asking him to come back and even try out at 43, I mean, if you're going to do that, just say, hey, I want to come be like an assistant coach, because let's be serious, that's about all he would be. There's no way that they'd actually anticipate tossing a 43-year-old Kurt Warner who hasn't played in a few years into a game. Plus, why would he do that? That's just going to keep him away from being a Hall of Famer longer.
It's true. So Tony Romo did say that apparently now he would have taken less money or redone his deal to try and keep DeMarco Murray around. Um, Not sure really how I feel about that because if you felt that way, why didn't you do it?
Right? I mean, it's kind of like, well, and he said, I think DeMarco we've had said straight up, like he asked him before he signed with Philly to take less, right? Um,
Yeah,
so, or to restructure at the very least, restructure and get some more money for a cap hit up front, so we can at least, re-sign me being DeMarco Murray, for at least a short term, or so I can have a higher cap hit, and then we can lower that, and we'll work that out. But Dallas, they were up against the cap, right? So I mean, they don't really have a lot of room. I don't even know if Tony walked into management and said, "Hey guys, can we rework my deal?" It sounds like that's what he kind of told DeMarco, but since nothing really happened before he left, kind of makes it a little suspicious that he'd come out after the fact and say something.
yeah, I agree with that. I mean, it's a little interesting, and if anything, I mean, those two games, Dallas against the Eagles, they're going to be interesting this year. Be really interesting. Um, Probably the two better teams in the division. Though I think the Giants aren't necessarily a team people should sleep on. Um, just I don't know. I just think Philly and Dallas are probably the two top teams in that division. Um,
Will be fun and interesting to see what all those moves for Chip Kelly have done, if they've actually gotten better, stayed the same, or gotten worse.
it's
But
true.
sometimes some moves, you can't really judge them, 1 year. It might take a year or two, but it's a little interesting still. I mean, if we're going into the season with, Sam Bradford as the starter now.
Right. Yeah, I definitely agree with that. Another thing that happened this last week.
Sort of related to the basketball topics, which we started earlier, sort of related to the NFL. Lives are
It
merging
is.
together here. Uh,
So our good friend, who hasn't yet known that we talk about him on this show, Aaron Rodgers, went to the final or to the Arizona game with Olivia Munn, and he happens to actually be friends with Sam Decker and probably some of the other guys on the Badgers basketball team. But he was in attendance, and after the game, he was down on the court and was congratulating Sam Decker and some other players. And um, was Dennis Dodd? Is that his name?
yeah.
Yeah, Dennis Dodd. He wanted to interview Aaron Rodgers, and Rodgers pretty much blew him off and said, this isn't about me. This is about them. Don't interview me. And it just ignored him. And Dodd went on a giant Twitter rant that was probably like 7 or 8 tweets. It was a bunch of tweets that he was just not happy about. Just questioning how Aaron Rodgers can get on the court and how it's the same thing as if he just were to crash like his wedding and just show up and just blowing everything way out of proportion. And Rodgers, who's on Twitter but doesn't usually ever respond to people criticizing him, actually tweeted back and said he said that he had a pass and that if he had a problem to take it up with the AD, who's Barry Alvarez, and that his pass granted him access when Dodd claimed that he didn't have the right to be on the court when he actually did, obviously. And then he called Dodd a crybaby.
which was pretty funny. And then like if you went to the mentions on Dennis Dodd's page on Twitter, you could just see everybody. I don't think there was a single person. It's not even like a controversy because controversy would require, I think, two sides to be taken. Other than Dodd himself, I don't think there was a single person on Dennis's side on this one. Other media members were wondering what the hell his issue was.
Yeah.
Rich Eisen specifically said something I know that much, which I thought was pretty funny. Um, obviously Rodgers himself had something to say. And it's also interesting, too, because some people are criticizing Rodgers for not wearing red during the games or anything to kind of show that he's a Badgers fan and all this. But Rodgers, he was a Cal guy. Stanford's a big rival for them. Stanford wears red also. So it's a Cal thing that they don't wear red at Cal. So that's why he's not wearing red for the Badgers. He's like, hey, I'll support my team. I've been in Wisconsin 10 years. He's like, I've been there longer than I was at Cal or that I was at Butte College or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
He's like, so I'll support whoever the hell I want to,
Yeah, he
but I
said he'll
won't wear red.
support whoever he wants. That's
Which hey, I mean, it's a little surprising. Like, I feel like that's been the shortest 10 years of my life. My God, like, I can't believe Rogers has already been in Wisconsin for 10 years. Well, it would have almost been 10 years, I guess, of this draft pick, because he was a 5 draft pick.
yeah.
So, I mean, he sat for a few years too and all that, but yeah, I just thought that was hilarious. And then, and Lance Briggs thought he should be continuing to root for Pac-12 teams in Arizona, but I think that's kind of also where that I'll root for whoever I want tweet was directed at not only Dodd, but also at Lance Briggs, because Briggs is, whatever. But yeah, that was pretty fun. If you guys haven't seen that at all, go check it out. I know Deadspin's got some pieces on it. ESPN, everywhere else, Bleacher Report's going to have some stuff on basically Dennis Dodd making an ass of himself online. And it's also interesting, too, because we talked about this beforehand. I mean, you'll see guys like Tony Romo going to Duke games. At least Rogers has a connection to the state. I don't know what Tony Romo's connection to Duke is. He grew up in Wisconsin, went to Eastern Illinois, and he plays in Texas. I have no idea why he's going to Duke games. I don't mind that he's supporting the team, but if Dodd's going to go off on one guy for supporting a team and being on the court, my God, can at least make it Tony Romo, who's at least his fandom doesn't make sense at all, other than Duke is a popular team and he's probably some sort of bandwagon jumper. I don't know.
That's an excellent point as well. I mean, the fact that it seems like Rogers gets called out and someone like Tony Romo doesn't, even though we all know Tony Romo, if people don't know, is from Wisconsin. He went to, like you said, Eastern Illinois. Like, what the heck does that have to do with Duke?
It doesn't, but oh well, it is what it is, and I actually thought it was great that Rogers responded and then he got support from as many people as he did, either in the media as well as the fans.
Definitely.
That was kind of fun.
So a couple
go for it.
A couple of signings that have happened recently. Pretty decent sized names. Dwayne Bowe ended up signing with Cleveland.
I don't know what that means for anybody. The guy hasn't scored a touchdown in like 2 years.
Is that his? He would have if he wouldn't have fumbled. Just saying.
I mean, obviously, the offense is going to be different. I don't think they're going to just be that same sort of style, obviously, that, Kansas City's worked with Andy Reid. But I still wish Cleveland would have drafted a guy last year. And we mentioned that. I know if we were to go back and go back to 40 podcasts and go find our NFL, AFC, North podcast, we'd probably say, Cleveland's got to draft a receiver and a quarterback. Well, they did one of them. He was not to be good, and then they didn't do the other thing or address it at all, and that's kind of biting them in the ass at the moment. So we'll see how good Bowe does. It took forever for him to get released from Kansas City. I don't know what they're taking their damn time with, but that took a while. So I mean, maybe it'll be good to see him kind of rejuvenate his career. I think he led the NFL in touchdowns one year, right? He had like 14.
Yeah.
My God, that's back
a productive receiver. He just wasn't the last couple of years, so we'll see what happens with that. I mean, obviously the quarterback situation is pretty unstable in Cleveland, so it's probably not going to help anything, I would guess, but maybe they'll find some continuity and maybe he'll end up being a decent pickup.
We'll see. I mean, Cleveland, I feel like, was pretty close. I don't know if they won against any really good teams last year, but hell, they were pretty close to being almost like a pseudo playoff team in terms of their win record and how close they really could have been.
Right.
Especially with some of their closer games that were losses too. So we'll see how that ends up going. We still have this draft obviously to go through, and they got a couple first-round picks, I think.
Yep.
So they're still in a position to definitely improve their team, not only for this year but for the long haul after having a couple first-rounders the last few years. Some Packers as well. Re-signed B.J. Raji to a year and the Troy Guion to another one-year deal. Do you like those deals? Do you have anything to say about them at all?
Yeah, I like them a lot. Anyone that watched the Packers, I know Guion got in trouble in the offseason a little bit, but honestly, that might have helped because I was a little worried we were going to lose him too. I felt like he played pretty good, especially towards the end of the year. He got better. He was one of those guys that felt like he was getting better every game. Really figured out his role on the team. So I think he was an important signing, and we got him cheap. And then B.J. Raji, who was hurt all of last year, but everyone was really excited going into last season with him because he was moving back. Don't ask me why. We moved him to defensive end from nose tackle, but he was going back to his original position of nose tackle. And now, we might have two guys that we can rotate in and out of nose tackle, which most teams have trouble finding one nose tackle. So, and obviously injuries, like, Raji's got to prove that he can stay healthy, but you can't have enough of those big guys in the trenches, especially guys who are solid. And I don't see any reason why it can't work out really well for us having both of them.
Yeah, I mean, I was a little surprised because I feel like Wisconsin or Green Bay tries to be sort of like we do it the right way sort of thing, and I think signing a guy like Guyon who got pulled over with that much marijuana in his car, I was a little suspicious of him coming back, but I mean, if he's not gonna go to jail or anything, and he's not being suspended by the league, hey, that's a great signing for cheap, like you mentioned. Played well, Raji too. If he can get back, to keep the guys fresh with those guys rotating in and out all the time, I don't see why that can't definitely help our line. And it being cheaper, at least 1 year, kind of bridges.
Yep.
Maybe we'll still get a defensive tackle in the draft at some point this year that we think can contribute in the future. Because those guys obviously probably aren't long-term answers, so we'll need to address that, especially since we are a 3-4 team. But we still got a lot of needs too, I think, at corner and linebacker, especially
corner
inside.
And linebacker. Yep, I agree with you on that. But like you kind of hit on, I mean, maybe it means we don't have to take a defensive lineman in the first round now.
Yeah. So we'll see how that goes. And then, we just kind of mentioned the draft, in passing there. Kind of segues nicely into this. Word is Mariota won't be attending the draft. And then Jameis Winston said he wasn't going to, but now he may be backing off that. He's a little soft on whether or not he's going to commit and attend the draft. Do you have an issue with the players not attending at all? Mariota staying at home with his family, and Winston at least initially saying that he's going to be with his grandma who can't travel with him to the draft, so he's going to spend time with her. Do you have a problem with either of those?
I don't have a problem with what Winston said. Honestly, though, Winston, the thing that bothers me, I guess, it should be everyone's choice, but I feel like for Winston, like, it's an opportunity to, I don't know, start fresh. And I feel like if you go to the draft and you make a really good impression among the fans and obviously the team that drafts you and the commissioner, like, I just feel like it's a good, you can put the stuff that happened in college behind you, like, move on with your life, like, let's do this. And I just think by not being at the draft, honestly, I don't care really that much either way, because they're probably going to have a camera crew wherever he goes. But, and same with Mariota. As a fan, I would say that I'm a little disappointed because I do think it's kind of cool that they get all these top-tier prospects to go to this one area, and the cameras are always on them, and so as a fan, I enjoy it. I wish they would both be there, but do I have a big problem with it? No.
Yeah. And how would you like to be the camera guy that gets to go and film Mariota's family out in Hawaii? Oh, I would be raising my hand. I'd be like, hey, can you guys send me to Hawaii for the day? I'll go out there and I'll hang out with Mariota's family. That'd be fun.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I know like Joe Thomas, for instance, he didn't attend the draft. He ended up being the 3rd overall pick, I think, when he was drafted. He and Dad were out fishing on a boat.
And to be honest, of the top prospects, maybe it's just because he's the only one that comes to mind, but I can't really name any other top 5 pick that wasn't in attendance. Can you?
Off the top of my head, no.
He's really the only one that I can visually picture not walking up and, like, shaking the commissioner's hand and getting his picture. You know what I mean? Like, he's the only one I can think of that, at least top 5, that wasn't there.
Yeah, that's a good question. I don't I'm gonna look this up when we're done, because obviously it's gonna take up a lot of time here
Oh
at the
yeah,
end of the podcast to look that up. But I'll tweet out, that information in a minute here when we're done with this.
there you go.
Um, but yeah, I don't have an issue with that. And then also we mentioned earlier, Winston, by the way, his pro day was just recent. Off screen or off camera, we mentioned, it didn't change your mind one way or another. I don't think it would have changed my mind either. I think playing too much into those is a little silly. You saw Teddy Bridgewater go from what could have been a first round pick to being, or the first overall pick to being the last pick in the first round. Um, just because of his pro day, and there were some stupid questions about him having skinny knees or small hands, whatever the issues were there, and then he obviously outplayed that. So pro days, I think, are a nice way to get some of the guys that weren't at the combine some exposure,
Mhm.
more so than it is for these top tier guys to try to prove one way or another that they belong up there.
Yeah.
And so, but at that pro day, some people were saying that he looked a little soft in the midsection there. Which, hey, so do I. There's no issue with that. But I'm also about to get paid millions of dollars for this. So, um, do you take anything away at least from that little bit? That, hey, like if you're gonna be the number one pick and this is your livelihood, that if you can be a little soft in the wear a little inner tube. Is that is that something that you can do?
Well, unfortunately, the example I was gonna go with is hurt and might not be the same player ever again. So I don't want to use that example anymore. So now I can't think of a good example. But no, it does not concern me. The player I was thinking of
And
was Kevin Durant because he's not jacked and he's still really good. In fact, he's flabby. I hope he doesn't see this because he tends to get angry at people that criticize him sometimes. So I'm just saying, Kevin, just saying. But um, I, I come on, this is a serious question. I'm not going to say it because I don't want to get him mad at me either if he happens to end up stumbling upon this. But there's a certain quarterback who's also not exactly Mr. Jacked and kind of flabby in the stomach. I think he's the best quarterback in the league, so he's just fine.
and I was gonna say too, what's the other sport that Winston plays? He's a baseball guy. You've seen those baseball dudes? I don't think there's any in-shape baseball players, the ones that are on steroids. So I'm just saying, hey, if that doesn't work out for him, being a little flabby, he's already ready for his MLB career. All right, he's got another option to fall back on, and he's just preparing himself for that.
There you go.
That was my opinion on that. I was like, hey, you know what? I don't think Ben Roethlisberger was ever a skinny dude. Um, he's played all right. Peyton Manning, I don't think he's probably ever had a six pack. Never seen his abs, so I don't know. But he looks like he possibly can't. I mean, there's guys. I don't know if I would say that they're fat necessarily. They're just not totally jacked dude. Kaepernick's a jacked guy. Look what that's doing for him. It's not. I like Cap. Seems like a decent dude. I like watching him run around. But just because he's got like the six pack and he's jacked and
I
everything
have
doesn't
big
make him a great.
muscles. I can throw the ball hard.
Oh,
Not very
come
accurately,
on.
though.
So, yeah, that's my opinion on that. I just don't really think that it matters, and we're getting into that point where because the draft now is so much later than it was before, we're just creating stories to talk about.
Everyone's just creating stories and yeah.
Right? I wish the draft was like this weekend instead. That'd be much easier, like it used to be back in the day. Um, but anyway, I think that's all we have for today. Matt and I are going to be talking about trying to get a little more activity up on our website, being a little more active in other ways other than just the podcast too. So keep an eye out for that.
A couple of you that actually watch this, bear with us. We're gonna try to get this going a little bit more. Maybe we're gonna try really hard to get this going a lot more. I think so. We'll see what we can do with it.
And next week we're gonna have a buddy on, right?
Yes. Next week, my friend Josh Yeager will either be live with me here, or we're gonna try and do a video conference like we've done in the past with like Cortland and Brett's friend Josh. So hopefully he's a giant Packer fan like me. So we'll probably try and figure out some Packer stuff to talk about, get his opinion, get his or our opinions on stuff, and just kind of see what we can come up with. But yeah, that's hopefully going to happen next week. So we'll hopefully have another guest with us.
Awesome. I guess. Well, Thanks for watching this episode of Brett Matt Show, and we'll see you later.
Sounds good.